All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I am joined by Myriad for our upcoming series. It's going to be Wham and Puppy Paw. I remember like yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago, that we had this series, so it's going to be interesting. The drafts are always going to be interesting because it's specific. Both of these players know each other very well, so
Oh yeah,
there's some mind games there. But yeah, glad to have you join us, Myriad, as a player to a caster. How are you doing?
very well. It's a pleasure being here as Rising Empires in Denver to cast here for King of the Rockies. Always good fun. Always good fun. It's our first time casting together as
It is
well,
our first
so
time.
exciting time indeed. But as you said, right, these two do know each other very well, and speaking with Wham a bit earlier, it's always a slightly bittersweet feeling
Yeah.
to knock each other out like this, being forced in a position to knock each other out. So yeah, I mean, obviously, Poppy was probably feeling a little bit of tension after their last set.
Yeah.
It's
A
a
little
tough
more
one, right?
fatigue probably,
Yeah,
but I mean it's kind of happens, right? And these both of these players know each other like they're brothers because they are brothers.
well,
Well,
that
and I
they
mean
are.
they're very sometimes when they practice each other, right? Practice with each other, kind of the play styles of each other and specific matchups. Like we were kind of seeing earlier in the Puppy Paw Lambs series. You get kind of unorthodox matchups and kind of unorthodox strategies. You saw like an Abbasid play on Prairie, for example. Kind of you don't expect some of these selections. So we are going to see what happens in terms of draft, what happens in terms of civ picks on certain maps. But it is always going to be interesting because these two players are tippity top, and it's always fun to watch.
I always find it very interesting, especially when two players are so close together, and this is very common in the top 8, the top 10 especially. I mean, we have obviously Wham and Poppy are brothers, right? Twins for that matter. Lucifron and Vortex as well, very close. In the past, Marine Lord and Beastie used to practice together a lot, and then Anatand as well. More recently, a couple of years back, he became very close and played a lot with B. Having someone that close to you who you can practice with, share ideas with, can lift you up not only in game but mentally as well, I think it's crucial and is a big aspect as to why they are so successful. On top of the ridiculous hard work and talent, of
Yeah,
course.
the baseline required, right?
Yeah,
To be here.
exactly. But it's what I find really intriguing is as you practice so often with one person, you often discover things between yourselves and you almost form your own meta, which we have seen time and time again between all of these different pairs. They have very similar play styles often, and they have their own ways of thinking and playing about the game, which is very exciting. And seeing those two clash is fantastic, but seeing the very partners clash is also very exciting. So
Yeah.
much to look forward to here.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, having a practice partner in these types of situations is really important. Like we said earlier, ladder and tournament play is very different in terms of
Oh, yeah.
what strategies you go for. And the practice partners that you have, especially a practice partner that is in a similar level that you can devise strategies with, is really important. But when it comes to the fact that you kind of have to compete against each other, then kind of things change, right? So then you kind of have to adapt, and we did see in the previous series, Puppy Paw versus Wham, how they kind of adapted to each other's kind of strategies and play styles. So there's always kind of a back and forth. It's like you said, bittersweet sometimes, and especially since it's the last day, and whoever doesn't make it out of this series is not going to continue. So it is that dynamic of it. But at least for us as viewers, it's really fun to see.
Absolutely. And a very important series indeed we have on our hands. This is essentially, the semi-final almost. The winner of this will have another chance to go up against Marine Lord. It might be Puppy, it might be Wham. And the one that's left will, of course, secure that third place for themselves. Both players undoubtedly eager to win, of course. Despite being brothers, I'm sure they will not hold back against each
No,
other,
no.
right? And knowing each other inside and out, like you mentioned, it's always fantastic to theorize about what level of mind games are going on between these two, as we see
Yep.
the one and only Cal helping the two of them set up there, making sure everything is in order, as the draft should be getting underway very shortly here.
Yep.
And
Brothers or not, we're here to compete, right? So
yeah,
there's only one player that's going to make it out of this series and continue in the tournament. And like we said before, if you're not playing versus each other, then you're the biggest supporter. But when you're competing against each other, it's a different scenario, right? So yeah,
That's
we're setting up for this series, and like you said, we should be able to see the draft pretty soon. Setting up.
You know, having my own brother that I often play games with, he's the one that got me into gaming initially. There's quite a bigger age gap than it is between Wam and puppypaw, right? And sadly, he doesn't play Age of Empires 4 yet. I'm working on that very much. But you know, it can get very competitive, right? And especially at this level, you need to have an innate level of competitiveness to, you know, cope with the stress of these high tension situations at the top level. So,
Yeah, I mean, we're all down for another bro, you know, Canadian bro, Spanish bro, and then we need another a pair of bros.
yeah, well,
It's always fun for us.
hopefully
as the
one day,
viewers.
right? He's a bit reticent about it, but I'm working on it. I'm
Maybe
working
we
on
need
it.
some time to kind of build them up, but it definitely will be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, look at this pairing in terms of all-time win rates. So close, so even, right? And yeah, I mean, it's going to be another hopefully even series and back and forth. Could be another 3-2 series for us.
Indeed. I mean, I don't think I have ever seen closer stats between two players than this. Look at that.
49.5% win rate.
One singular win between them and the match count, 55 for Wam, 56 for puppypaw. Of course, 14 series for Wam and 15 for puppypaw. It's pretty ridiculous, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, very brotherly, very even, I would say, exactly. So we'll see when the draft comes up how that dynamic changes in terms of how they match up, what civs are they going to kind of look for on certain maps, and let's see who changes this win rate just a little bit, maybe closer to 50% or maybe a little bit away.
Quite interesting to see at these two's history in particular. I think initially, throughout the early days of Age of Empires 4, it seemed to me like puppypaw was maybe a little bit ahead of his brother. I spoke to them about this longer ago. I'm not sure exactly which one of them got the other one into the game. I'm not sure whether that has any bearing on it, but
Which one's the myriad of the brothers?
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And because of that, right, puppypaw having had a little bit of an advantage over Wam historically, at least in the past, but that has evened out so much recently, right? I mean, I know puppypaw, of course, started actually working. Whereas Wam, I do believe he's pretty much full time as well, so that has allowed him to close that gap somewhat here. Indeed, obviously, we did see puppypaw win up against Wam yesterday, but anything can happen. Players change day by day.
When you look at the win rate, even if there's small differences, the stats don't lie, right? They are very close, very even in terms of skill, and it's what you want as a player, as a viewer rather, to see these two even players go at it at the last day of a LAN event.
Exactly. Absolutely right. So I'm very excited to see what will be on our hands here today as we prepare.
I was working hard to get this set up. We're going to have... Oh. Well, maybe it's taking a little longer to draft here.
Yeah, I mean, Cal was definitely getting his steps in for the day, without a doubt, running back and forth between the stage. Maybe just very slight technical issues going on, so bear with us while we sort those out. But I mean, plenty to talk about, without a doubt, as we await here for.
I mean, Cal's been getting his steps in the last few days. He's, as I say, he's everywhere at once. And
a true workaholic, and we're very grateful to have someone like him.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure exactly sure where we would be without him, really.
Absolutely.
But luckily, it all works out in the end, right?
Yeah, we're gonna wait for these civs to pop up, these maps to pop up, and our viewers are excited for this upcoming series.
And there are claps for the Canadian brothers there. Claps in chat as well, please. Thank you very much. We want to see those going for us. And here we see, we do get confirmation here from Cal. So far, early in the day, and it's half towards that daily 10,000 mark steps here for Cal. So good work done indeed for him. As we get plenty more to come, I'm sure. He's definitely going to fill that out before the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's all over the place. I mean, we need him to be all over the place, especially when there's this setup going on, technical issues, everything that might happen. But meanwhile, as we're waiting, I want to, is it left side for me, right? I got to point up there. We have been getting almost over half of the match revenue that we need to get us to that S tier LAN event. So, we do some bans. We don't know what's banned, but something's getting banned. And we are gonna, thanks.
bans are the one that begin the series, right? 2 bans each, which I think is the right way to do it, frankly, with the level, with the way the meta is currently, and no surprises here, of course. It is the House of Lancaster and China banned out, right? Then Wam picks up the Byzantines as his first choice.
And also Japanese banned as well, right? So for
Oh, yes.
puppypaw. So House of Lancaster, of course, for both players are banned, and Japanese for puppypaw. China for Wam, no surprises there, but a little variation there for Japanese. And then there's also going to be, similar maps. I think most players in the tournament prefer these land maps. I don't know, as a player yourself, probably a little less, unpredictability at times. Maybe just kind of practice. You play on land maps a little more. What do you think? Is that how it's been kind of the trend?
Yeah, this at this sort of level, you need to have the confidence in yourself to be comfortable on the most standard of maps, right? This is where, at the end of the day, outside of matchup-specific situations, skill trumps, right? And you need to have the faith in yourself that on even grounds, you are able to best the other player, right? And not rely on, more gimmicky maps or more unusual maps that have more unique strategies and matchups. Of course, those are always interesting and important to add there for variety and for further skill expression as well, but they're always harder to practice. You don't get as much practice on them. They're not as common, right? So you'd rather just sort of keep it safe to what you know. But as you mentioned, the Japanese ban is interesting, very catered towards puppypaw, who is one of the most disgustingly skilled Japanese players, I would say, personally.
And when there's a skilled Japanese player, it's really hard to deal with, right? As you get into castle and there's mounted samurai everywhere, definitely don't wish that on my worst enemy as a player.
Eh?
Yeah, and Shinobi, I guess.
This guy.
And there's also a Roost ban for puppypaw, also another civ that puppypaw really likes to play. And on the other side, a Ubits ban. What do you think about that?
A Ubits is a little bit interesting. Looking at the maps here, seems like, there's no any crazy map here. The whole tournament, there's no map that Iubid really, really shines on. They can be solid on a lot of these maps, right? Pigeon's View, of course, the additional berries, always great for a berry civ like the Iubid's, one of the best ones. And looks like we have Prairie in the pool as well, which is, for a quite a loose cavalry-orientated temple-based civilization like the Iubids, that is something they love, right?
It could be the case that this is a ban, like Wam-specific ban, right? Because they're practicing together. Maybe there are some builds and strategies that Wam likes to do with the Uvids, and that might be a kind of a player-specific ban. We don't know, but yeah, we do see some French, Sushi, Delhi. I'm told that some requests in the chat that if Delhi is played, I have to contractually obligated to make some elephant noises, but hopefully hopefully we don't see that. But
we'll see what they come up.
We'll see what happens. And then the last pick for Wam is Mongols, and then Abbasid for puppypaw, a Ubids and Abbasid. So puppypaw bans a Ubids, picks it up himself, and then also goes for Abbasid.
Yeah, that's right. So putting high priority on those berry civilizations, we do know that there is a high regard placed on Iubids between these two brothers specifically, and they definitely make them work. So I'm curious to see how puppypaw looks to employ those. I'd love to see some Abbasid simply because it's something we see so rarely nowadays, right? But it can be very solid if it survives the initial stages where it's just so vulnerable in the current meta, especially. But looking at the drafts here, it's solid both ways, right? You could argue Wams is a little bit more rounded. Byzantines is fantastic, so is Japanese. Having Jushi as well is great. Mongols is always a very strong counter pick, and then Rus as well at the end is so great. But puppypaw does have China.
Yeah, a lot of different.
That's what I'm going to say.
You pick your battles, right? You're able to ban certain civs, and sometimes when you ban it, you can also kind of save it for yourself a lot of times. So there's that going on. But yeah, China, Malians, definitely some good options for puppypaw here. It's not like a very uneven draft. It kind of depends on matchups, which player chooses which civ on which map, and then kind of you anticipate what your opponent's going to try to pick. There's some options, and you try to pick the best one for yourself.
That is most important. Drafting is essentially half the game at this level. Understanding these matchups and knowing how they interact based on the map that you do play them on is so crucial. And typically when we do have an opening map here, which is going to be Dry Arabia, you often look for the sort of safest pick that has the least bad matchups and is the most reliable, because the whole pool is open. You don't know exactly what the opponent is going to pick. So I'm not very surprised here to see Wam opting for the Rus in this case, facing puppypaw's China. Now this is interesting because, you know, a little while ago, especially when Pro Scouts was at its peak, Rus, we know all about how oppressive Rus was back then, and they're still very, very potent, and they used to be very good up against China, but they've fallen off a little bit recently, whereas China seems to only be getting better and better. So, and we know historically, puppypaw's China is just special.
Yeah. I mean, in the best of 5, right, you don't want to fall behind. So, like you said, as you don't know which civ is going to pick on this map, so you kind of want to go for a solid pick. And we see a classic matchup, Rus versus China, both very, very strong civilizations. And as you said, I mean, Rus is known for Pro Scouts, but China is able to do them very, very well, even without gold sometimes, right? So definitely 2 very strong Pro Scout civs. There's going to be a lot of early aggression to try to secure as much tier as possible, and then transition to castle where both civs shine and try to put on pressure.
China's ability to afford every single upgrade in the feudal age and then an age up without mining a single lick of gold after the 100 needed for the age up in 35 for that first official never ceases to amaze me. So
I mean, to
I
be
look
fair,
forward to seeing that again.
Rus also gets a little bit of passive
do.
gold. So both of these civilizations not very gold dependent and in terms of gathering. But yeah, I mean, Rus and China, the ultimate Pro Scout civ, right? You'd say Zushi probably, maybe Zushi versus China, which one's better Pro Scouting, but China, there's other advantages that make it so strong.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, like you mentioned, Rus as well does have plenty of that passive gold income. And in fact, it does have a larger initial investment necessary to reach that gold income, but there's a higher ceiling as well. I mean, Rus, of course, there's a cap of just over 400 gold passively from hunting cabins alone, and that does not include the high trade house. So, and that does exceed the sort of 300 or so taxes maximally that you can get as income from taxes alone as China. So Rus does have the higher ceiling in the late game, and you know, historically China is very, very powerful and potent in the late game, but so is Rus. So curious to see whether it does reach that point. I'm sure neither player really wants to, you know, they're not known for their long games.
Yeah, I'm sure as a viewer, a lot of times you want to see that early aggression, right? See those exciting early, because whatever happens early on has much more effect in terms of outcome of the game. Sometimes in the end of games, kind of a meat grinder, even though you lose your entire army or kind of something big happens, it's not as effective or as influential on the game. But yeah, these 2 players are setting up for this first classic Dry Arabia game matchup, Rus and China.
Moments away we are, I'm sure, from jumping into the most classic and reliable of maps, the one and only Dry Arabia here, and what a pair of civs to see it happen as well. It's going to be an exciting one. I mean, anything can happen, really. I'm quite curious specifically how that castle age goes, because many players opt for different answers up against those horse archers, which is what Rus is really known for nowadays, especially. Some players opt for knight archer, it's quite typical. We often see crossbow horsemen as well, in anticipation of knights alongside those horse archers too. That can be a very potent composition too. So quite excited to see what puppypaw opts to go for when it reaches that point. But knowing China, and specifically puppypaw's China, a certain landmark being dropped very forward wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of Rus matchups, it's essentially Rus going horse archers, and we are going into the game with a cinematic view of the Dry Arabia, perhaps the favorite map of all time, most players. And jumping the game, I was saying Rus and a lot of other civs, it's basically Rus going horse archers in that initial stage, castle age, and then most other civs going for knights. So when there's numbers are not too high up, then knights can actually do very well and secure those relics. So we are going to see what happens in the early castle situation, and we have our trademark sheep counter, pretty even for now.
Indeed.
And all those sheep icons in the mini map, so we know as the viewer exactly where you are.
Yeah, pretty hard to miss those sheep on the minimap, that's without a doubt, as we load into game number 1 here, between Canada's very own Wam in the color yellow as the Rus spawning in towards the northwestern side of the map, facing his twin brother, no less, puppypaw, in the color red as the Chinese, fitting color indeed for the civilization, spawning towards the southeastern side of the map here. Looks like a standard opening here so far, nothing too crazy, as you know, this is quite normal for these two civilizations. They have very, very linear builds in these early stages. Looking at the hunting cabins there for Wam, very spread out. He's looking to fully maximize that gold income. I mean, China very rarely, if ever, nowadays goes for those spears, so he knows there's no real threat to him.
Yeah, and I mean, especially for Rus, going for any kind of Dark Age play is very, very costly, and they would rather, and both of these civs would rather just go normally up to Fuel Age and try to go to that fast pro scouts to secure as much deer as possible. And most of this deer spawn is forward, right? So, of course, it's going to be pro scouts, so this positioning is not as important as you're going to go, as if you were going to go out on the map to get the deer. But yeah, I mean, you want to go be early. Have your pro scouts finish as early as possible and try to get that deer home as soon as possible, because that initial boost is just so important. Going from sheep to deer, right? That initial food boost is just so powerful.
Yeah, it's so crucial to go on those day ASAP as soon as they do come in. It's easy to forget to actually manually assign your villagers on the day when they get under that mill or that town center, and that could often cause you to miss out on a lot of income. Survival techniques as well, very cheap upgrade, but easy to miss, is so crucial in these early stages. That makes a big difference in the long run. As you have the Imperial Academy there for 1puppypaw coming up, soon to be finished the age up, very fast age up here for the Chinese. Not only courtesy of their innate additional building speed, but of course, those officials, the earlier they come out, the better. Meanwhile, Golden Gate for Wam as well. Very standard and solid here so far.
And this is the landmark that makes China so strong, especially at this stage of the game, right? Imperial Academy is able to produce those imperial officials at a reduced cost. I mean, this is, because of this landmark, you're able to kind of utilize that fast age up and not have to invest in an imperial official, which is really advantageous situations. On the other side, there we go. I mean, you got to be careful with that. Chinese TC, sometimes it's pretty hard. The other thing is, though, even though the TC hits hard, the villagers often won't kind of bother to garrison as quickly as others says, so you have a little bit more leeway there.
Yeah, the hand cannon slits has very high base damage, which is fantastic up against high health, especially armored units, but typically weaker against light units like this scout. And as you mentioned, garrisoning the TC, it can be done when the mill is so close, but you know, you do miss out on those taxes, so it's one of those things.
It's like Puppy Power was a little bit pop cap, so that Imperial official, second Imperial official, was a little slower to go. Yeah, you want to maximize, like you said, the tax advantage, right? Because it's so strong. Two Imperial officials already, and both players are going to transition to Pro Scouts, and we do see Pro Scouts being queued up by 1puppypaw already.
Yeah, just a little bit of housing there. Issues for 1puppypaw rushing up that village. This makes me wonder because, you know, I haven't seen too many other players do this, but I personally do start with the village when playing China. It sets you behind just a tiny bit in terms of age up and officials, but you don't have any of these issues in the early game at all. You don't need houses for a long way into feudal age, so I'm surprised to see not more players doing it, but, you know, what do I know, really?
Look at this. Wam is pushing the deer, even though it's going to take a lot longer than it used to, but might as well, right? You're waiting for Pro Scouts. You have nothing to do for your many scouts. 4 already for Wam, and this is another advantage for Rus, right? You have those hunting cabins that are able to produce those scouts, so in terms of number of scouts, you're a lot more ahead in terms of that race. How can supervise this table, of course, so catch up that way, but it is kind of a race there.
Yeah, but we're opting to get out all of his officials ASAP here, so we're going to see that gold income increase tremendously very soon, and the supervision, of course, cannot be understated. Wam, as you mentioned, doing the classic here, getting those day as close as possible. Day pushing, not quite what it once was, but any inch you can get them closer means they will come in earlier and then be safer as well.
Especially because they're slower, right? Yep. The speed of the scouts with carrying the carcass is slower, so even though it's kind of slow to push the deer, it's worth a lot of times. We do see production buildings. We see a knight actually from Wam. Normally it's more horseman, spear, archer, but Wam wants a little bit of a stronger unit to contest this deer.
Yeah, that's right. Those early knights still a very potent tool here for the Rus. So one on the field can do a lot of work for him and demand a lot of respect. You see the charge does come in towards the scout. Probably not quite close enough to connect. Singular horseman from 1puppypaw, second one now in queue, as well as supervision on the barracks, getting out 2 spears rapidly here for him. Going to start to look to secure this frontal day back for himself even further. Might look potentially to contest, as we know China can get an incredible mass of units very, very early in this feudal age, as the horseman is going to start being annoying on the scout towards this secondary day back for Wam. With 5 scouts and 2 archers on the field as well as the knight, it shouldn't have too much trouble securing these there, and we're most likely going to see an even split.
Yeah, and Puppypaw with that one scout moved forward to try to maybe steal, but with that one knight initially, it's a lot safer for Wam to be able to defend his scouts. Now, horsemen are faster, right? They can catch up to scouts without the carcass, so that's it. You know, good for trying to kill scouts. But when you're defending, one knight goes a long way.
It's very true. Very strong unit indeed, and it always makes you a bit reticent to move across the map against them. However, with this melee composition coming in from Puppypaw here, the horseman and the spears, that is something that is very good up against knight archer in the feudal age, especially in lower numbers.
Exactly.
When you don't have the critical mass of archers to one-shot these spears, it can become very, very scary to fight. Speaking of, as we have the clash coming in, Puppypaw looking to put on the aggression very early here, as the day gathering gets denied at this point in time. Not many units here for Wam, and he has cut production entirely, so most of that day pack is still up there to be collected. The archer gets cut off as well by the horseman. It will go down. Horseman trading some HP.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that melee comp, especially for Puppypaw, is so much easier to kind of put on the pressure in these numbers. Now, Wam is denied from this top deer pack, but we see the high trade house already, and this is the power of Bruce.
That's right. With minimal unit investment, Wam is able to get a phenomenally rapid castle age timing here, but he might be losing out on 3 of those deer for it, which does definitely hurt in the long run. And as we can see, classic China things. Puppypaw not far behind at all. In fact, he might even potentially be ahead of Wam in age up here, but it seems like there's only 5 on the landmark. Nice and slow. You don't need nearly as many with China on the age up, so you can afford to age up with less and have a more stable economy behind it too. The knight and scouts do find one of the deer that's being carried back here too, in fact, towards Puppypaw, so he's going to be able to get 2 of them back towards himself. Whether they actually reach the base though?
Yeah, I mean, there's a long way back home, and that scout knows exactly where they are. And like you said, 6 spears out on the field is very effective in this scenario because they kill scouts so fast. So if you're not careful, you lose scouts left and right. Like you said, melee comp, horsemen, and spearmen. And these 2 players, they made just enough units to not fall behind in that castle camp, right? They're not over making units and putting themselves behind.
The first horse archer in queue now for Wam. Make that 3 instead now. Probably triple archery range already set up for him. Most likely we see 1, 2, and 3 indeed. Blacksmith as well already, as well as double broadaxe in for him, but no steeled arrow or undermesh queued for him yet. Little early war coming in here, recognizing the threat of Night Flood potentially here from Puppypaw, something that's becoming increasingly popular up against the Rus to control that early horse archer mass. Of course, in low numbers especially, these units are very vulnerable. They are glass cannons at the end of the day, so if you're able to control the mass and keep them pinned in their base, restrict that map control, that can really yield you a lot of results here, as we see already 5 knights on the field for Puppypaw.
Yep. Yeah, like we were saying before, right? When you don't have that mass of range units, that is the horse archers, it's not as powerful. And Wam, in this early stage, with so many knights being able to produce so quickly from Puppypaw, it's just he wants to play safe. He wants to secure his wood lines a little bit. Now, these horse archers are going to be able to get rid of the spears really, really quickly. It's just the knights, right? The high HP units that you have to kind of micro and pay attention to so that you don't get a charge off and then. Because horse chargers are not very high HP units compared to these lancers.
Definitely not. Steel arrow is in now for Wam. Undermesh as well in for Puppypaw. The exact necessary tools here to offset some of that damage and increase it for Wam. Little knight run by here could be crucial here for Wam. This is what's so effective about getting out so many lancers early up against the Rus is, you know, you are at risk of being kited virtually endlessly by those horse archers if you keep all of your lancers in one mass. However, when you split them this way, it can be so effective because the lancers, they demand way more horse archers to be dealt with than equal numbers. As the charge comes in, one villager goes down straight away. More idle time cores. Second goes down. Garrisoning comes in into the wooden fortress as well as the TC. That will keep the villagers safe, but 2 went down and plenty of idle time caused here.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is when lancers are diving, the base is not as it takes a lot to kind of deal with them, right? It's not just static defenses. You need your units nearby, as opposed to horse archers. They're very flimsy or kind of much more vulnerable to TC fire. So Puppy's able to kind of dive and cause idle time like this. Of course, he has to be careful. There's a spindle tower there. A lot of damage. You don't want to lose these early knights.
So Puppypaw looking to play from the northern side as well, trying to split his knights as much as possible. Just like we mentioned, you want to get this horse archer mass split and vulnerable. And he looks to do his best to do so. Those 3 knights that did go on the wood line, 2 of them did go down, and the last one is likely to fall as well. Puppy just to come in centrally now.
I mean, as Roos, it can be really difficult to defend when your units are a little, yeah, all of this idle time, as you can see. I mean, both PC, there's a spindle tower as well. There's even units, but you just kind of have to maneuver units back and forth. It's so much easier for Puppypaw to kind of dive and cause this idle time with the knight as opposed to horse archer.
Yeah, this is classic Puppypaw at this point in time. No holds barred as he just charges in directly, not caring whatsoever about the arrow fire or the spring they placement. Of course, Undermesh 2 is in now, so he's going to be as impervious to arrow fire as possible. So many villages idle here for Wam. Over 23, that's more than half his economy. And the horse archer numbers are dwindling rapidly, but so are the knights. And Puppypaw, he can't keep this up forever. He does still have the way superior food income at this point in time, courtesy of that idle time, and plenty of damage has been caused. An additional 4 villages go down as well as the idle time. Wham! Let's have his secondary range damage in now as well, but Boyaz is probably still some ways out, I believe.
You can see from the economy count, right? It's just those. It's not just idle time; it's also permanent villager kills. And Wham's actually dropped down some stables, trying to probably transition into knights, right? To try to contest. It's so much more effective for horse archers, and we do see another raid, another villager probably going to go down with that charge, and he does. I mean, it's just so much idle time. Even if you have so many horse archers back home, still causing so much idle time with another villager going down. As I was saying, when you have a front line of knights as Roos, it's much more effective for the horse archers to dish damage and not kind of be vulnerable against the Chinese knights.
This rating is relentless from Puppypaw as well behind this. The extent that these players are investing into units, we see we don't even have a monastery yet for either player. The relics are all just second fiddle at this stage in the game, both fully focused on investing as much into units as possible at this stage. Puppy trying to bait Wham towards this northern side. Most of the horse archer mass is there. Meanwhile, the bulk of the lancers are in the south.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of classic China, right? In the cap stage with all these knights, kind of distract your opponent's army and keep at it with those raids. Just so difficult to deal with. And you can see from the economy count, 5138 already. I mean, it's not too far into Castle Age, but these raids have been dishing out so much damage.
This is why you want to keep China banned. Sure, Puppypaw's Japanese is incredible, but I don't think his Chinese is a slouch in comparison, as the Lancer is just continuously causing more idle time, more damage. 9 Vil kills now, not even counting the idle time. Again, more than half of Wham's economy is just not working. Just standing still, fleeing for their lives and garrisoning for safety. You know, behind this Puppypaw, he's just continuously pumping Lancers.
Yeah, and Wham has not been able to touch the economy of Puppypaw in response, right? All of these villagers for Wham, all across the map, have been very vulnerable. And the horse archers have not been an offensive unit right now. They've been trying to defend their own villagers.
Wham, frankly, has been doing a fantastic job of actually keeping his villages as safe as possible and minimizing the amount of damage, but it's so difficult against this early Castle Age pump from the Chinese. Again, the Lancers slip in. More idle time cause. No villages go down just yet, but again, they get discovered here on the north side as they escape towards the town center. None go down, but again, the majority of the economy is idle. The horse archer numbers are building yet again, now quite comfortably exceeding the amount of Lancers, but now the boar as well, which Wham has secured, is idled yet again. Maybe that wooden fortress could have been slightly closer to it, but
I mean, this is really dangerous, right? There's 8 villages, a lot of them low health, and if you don't look, you look away for a little bit and you're not careful enough, that's a long walk to the tower, and a lot of villagers can go up, die with the Knight's Charge already.
That's right. The transition now slowly starting for Puppypaw. We see the very first monk in queue for him. And we look to hit the field as well as Cosmo behind this. Nice catch here by Wham. seeing around the Lancers there on the retreat. Picks off 2. Looks like the others might fall as well, but the next battalion is there to meet as the charge comes in.
Yeah, it is crazy that we're at almost 17 minutes into the game, and only now have the players been able to kind of even think about relics, right? Puppypaw has that first villages unit go for those relics. It just kind of shows you how relentless back and forth the raiding and defending has been. I think he's going to get a charge off.
And the stealth forest! Oh no, what a place to enter there for Wam. Blindly takes a big charge there. Could have been way, way worse for him.
And more raids. 1 Lancer, 2 Lancer. I mean, thankfully, Wam does have some units. He knows that just the tower defensive fortification is not enough. He needs units back at home to defend his villagers. But idle time, regardless, right?
That's true. Luckily, though, for Wam, he did a good job there of keeping his reinforcements at home, understanding the threat of these raids towards him. Now again, Scout is enough to idle there on the ball. Wam, by this point, has PTSD of knights running through his base, I'm sure.
I mean, when you're trying to pay attention to so many different locations, right, you might as well just be safe. You don't know if that looks like a knight or a scout sometimes. Wam does have to be careful and make sure he doesn't take too much of those charges, because he's going behind the enemy base.
Yeah, this is high risk, high reward gameplay here from Wam at this point. I mean, he's been on the back foot in terms of defense for so long. He has to find some of his own damage, and it's prudent of him to try to do so, but the risk that carries, as you mentioned, being behind the opponent's lines here in their base means that the charge comes in, but at the same time, hitting from the front line, the gold is exposed here for puppypaw. A singular tower to keep 5 villagers safe, but the rest are exposed. 5 go down here for puppypaw. Very good pickup there for Wam. Charges there to meet and push away the horse archer mass for now, but damage has been caused as well as idle time. Now it's Wam's turn to deal damage, and so many villagers here exposed on the berries. Luckily the wall is there to cut them off.
Yeah, but no gate on the wall, so if Wam is able to kind of find this location, it's going to be very, very dangerous for puppypaw. And this is what Wam needs, right? He needs to dish out damage. He does have to be careful with these horse archers to micro and make sure that there's not a lot of horse archers that go down. And puppypaw, like you said, going into crossbows, anticipating that knight transition. And actually, crossbows are not bad against horse archers in kind of small numbers. So definitely the classic army composition like we're talking about. And he finds it.
Oh no, disaster for puppypaw here as with singular knight and the scout. Very, very useful scout in this case. Spots the massive villages. Yeah, no gate either. It's being rushed up now. Some villages will die on the exit. Not too many. That could have been way, way worse. But the idle time is the main issue. Crossbows as well. Maybe overextending here towards the center a bit. They do cause a bit of damage, cleaning up a bit of Wam's mass, but they will fall.
I mean, imagine if that was 10 horse archers, right? No gate, walking all around towards the inside of the base. Thankfully for puppypaw, it's only 1 knight. Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, this is what puppypaw is trying to do, and we do see a Barbican trying to get that economic advantage, right? Or just try to protect that wood line as well. Now Wam's able to be more aggressive. Puppypaw is trying to build these fortifications. Now he does have Barbican at his disposal. And it's just going to be back and forth. These horse archers versus knights, horse archers versus knights. Like you said, those crossbows moving a little too forward. So only 4 crossbows left on the field as of right now.
Yeah, it's a very welcome Barbican here for puppypaw. Not only is it going to increase the production speed of his town center, so more villagers under his belt, but of course a lot of vision on that Barbican, and is going to keep his woodline safe. Not quite forward enough to keep that gold safe. He does have an outpost for even further vision there, and naturally the Imperial Council is going to help with that as well. You see reinforcements being cut off here from puppypaw as he looks for another far northern raid. Likely to try to hit that boar yet again, or perhaps only to secure that relic.
And at this point, same time, puppypaw is going for the boar himself, right? So both trying to secure those relics and trying to kind of switch it back into the position where he was in. Oh, 1 knight. That 1 knight has gained so much value now, but Wam knows about this boar, and the second tower is not up. So if he can move some units over there. Ooh, GG is called.
For the first time in this game, Wam has exceeded puppypaw in villager kills, and we see the China here for puppypaw. Arguably a signature civilization outside the Japanese has been dealt with by Wam's Rus. Painful loss here for puppypaw, but as you mentioned, Rus is no slouch civilization whatsoever, especially up against other top-tier civilizations, in this case, historically indeed. So very well played by both players. It was looking very scary there in that initial castle age.
Night raids. I mean, at this point, I think puppypaw, just the food access, right?
Oh, yeah.
Running out of food. The boars found out that one night was able to do so much damage to the food economy of puppypaw. And with no gate, with all that idle time, and especially that boar being found out, it was just kind of the last straw for puppypaw. And like you said, initially it was really, really scary. All those villagers going down. At one point, it was almost 15 villager difference. But Wam is just kind of able to transition into offensive raids himself, and really important raids for the food access.
That's right. Rus, with a fantastic economy, they have a slightly more stable economy going forward in that castle stage. Of course, they keep having the trickle of day from the high trade house. They have the bounty. They can quite easily access Bor, and with the wooden fortress, that's exactly the garrison slots you need to keep them safe. Eventually, those horse archers will break out and start playing on towards the map. And when China runs out of food, that is the most vulnerable position for them. Exactly. The early injection of day is just brutal in terms of income for China, and can lead to very scary situations, as we saw. But once that food is out, it's a different story. And
I think there is a deli pick, so I mean, I don't know how to do an elephant noise, but eventually I'm going to have to. Yeah, Wam has Byzantines and puppypaw has Delhi. What do you think about this matchup? Byzantines definitely a really strong choice, but Delhi also has a lot of options as for it, going for it, and Fulays especially. Putting on that pressure, not letting Byzantines go off as easily for the cistern boom, for the mercenaries, right? There's some timings for Byzantines that Delhi can take advantage of.
Both civs are very, very good on this map, right? I mean, both berry civilizations, and there's plenty of berries here indeed. So plenty to take advantage of for these civilizations. And the matchup, we've seen it a bunch of times in the past, relatively common, not as much nowadays, but having a map like this can make it happen. I would say that Byzantines historically is just a little bit favored. Once you get out that tri-composition in feudal, you can really fight up against the Delhi. And when they lose control over those sacred sites, that's exactly what Delhi needs to snowball their game. And without it, they're one of the weakest civilizations in the game, frankly. So, people.
Yeah,
I mean, cut out for him with that one.
In this matchup, I think puppypaw is going to be a little bit on the back foot, and initially, right, with the limited A kind of defending, as opposed to switched, right? Puppypaw is going to be raiding, so Wam again has to be good defensively with his limited A, not try to lose too much economy, not take too much damage, and then eventually the Byzantine economy is going to be so strong, especially with those mercenaries as well. So that, I mean, both of these civs can do the things that they want and get to the castle age very strong, with a very strong economy, very strong units, and should be interesting to see.
Notably here is that there are only 2 sacred sites on Pigeon's View, which for Delhi is in a way a double-edged sword, right? Less potential gold income from those sacred sites, but at the same time, easier to defend, but of course easier to contest for the opponent as well, because typically Delhi does have that mobility advantage in the feudal age, courtesy of those Ghazis, a very premium horseman for them. As we begin to load into game number 2 here. Beautiful panoramic camera to show off the map here. I can't see anything, of course, because of the stealth forest. Fitting indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Stealth forest and some fog of war. Not fog of war, just general fog, it looks like. Yeah. I mean, this Byzantine looks a classic early stone. Try to build up those cisterns, right? Yeah, Delhi versus Byzantine right now. And puppypaw is going to go around trying to look for sheep. It's so important for Delhi as opposed to Byzantines to get that early sheep, right? You need that food access for Delhi. Less so for Byzantines, because you oftentimes rely on those berries instead.
Yeah, both civilizations can really squeeze so much value out of those berries. Byzantines, of course, do have that secondary food source in the form of olive oil, which they can use to pump out some of the best units in the form of mercenaries. Curious to see what contract will be picked here by Wam. Typically, we see a lot of the longbows just so reliable, so potent, especially on the defense, which is most likely going to be Wam's strategy this game, as he sets up his systems and early economy. Of course, the Delhi, additional food placed on those berries in the influence of a mill, as well as faster gather rate for him, allowing that immense early Delhi pump that they become so known for at this point in time. 2 on stone for Wam does mean there's going to be... This is a sort of midway point for the systems, right? We typically either see 1, 2, or 3. Some crazy people do go for 4, but that's not going to be the case here. You have to be very, very careful. There's some very fine early margins here in this matchup. Quite often we see the Byzantine player opt to go off of gold completely after they age up and get enough for the Limitane upgrade. Typically you do that when you want to look to contest the Delhi directly when they begin taking those sacred sites, once Sanctity does come in for them. Otherwise you could look to greed further and try to get your upgrades at the same time as you get your systems, but doing so risks giving over both sides to the Delhi.
I do want to point out in terms of food spawn, even though Byzantines initially doesn't need a lot of food access, when you have all of your food, right, all of your food on one side, puppypaw is going to be able to push on one side to deny that later stage of the game, especially the double deer pack, the berries, the second gold. And so all of those resources on that left side, now the wood lines are on the other side, and as the observer is pointing out, there's another berries right there, right? So it's a little spread out, but for Delhi, the food is spread out all across, so a little safer in terms of being able to manage that.
You see something that's become a little bit typical of this map so far, notably the deer here, right? For puppypaw, we have a direct frontal first deer pack, and then the secondary is leaned towards that northern side there. You know, for Wam, all 2 of them right tight close together, which again is a double-edged sword, right? Assistant up there secures an immense amount of premium food, but if you ever lose control of that position and that free pro scouts comes in from puppypaw's Delhi later on, then it's safe to say you're in a lot of trouble.
Yep. And Wam aging up with 3, we already see a lot of cisterns being put down, so he's going to be pretty fast to get up to the higher levels of cistern to try to get that economic bonus. And with this setup, Byzantines is just so strong, right, with that economic setup. And puppypaw for Delhi, they also have an economic bonus that is, of course, the free upgrades, but also the cheaper scholars that scale so well.
Just a little note about the UI. We see the upgrades on the left are, of course, puppypaws, but it is Wam that is on the left side of the map and the screen. So,
not anymore.
Oh, not anymore. As just like that, say it and you shall receive. Magic is fixing the issues here for us. Winery up now. Straight away puppypaw goes on to those berries while he still can, of course, before that Ghazi pump begins. Barracks on the way as well, and now is going to go up to cistern level 3 already. So Sot here for Wam. He did opt to stay on that gold, but he does look to now go off of stone slowly, only leaving 1 at this point in time. So semi-greedy, semi-safe start here for Wam.
Yeah, anticipating that familiar Ghazi play, right? Delhi Sultanate really likes to do this very fast. Ooh, all the way. I think that's going to be the 4th, right? The 4th
That's
system.
right, yeah.
So like you said, securing all that deer, high gather rate deer, eventually to get out. So Wam's going to kind of, like you said, semi-greedy, right? There's still 1 villager on stone. That might be pretty vulnerable, especially in the forward position, but Wam already has a barrack, so with a good micro, he should be able to have no problem.
Yeah, wheelbarrow coming in now for Wam as well. Definitely a crucial upgrade on when gathering berries and wood especially, but most notably berries here for Byzantines, which is exactly what the Byzantines want to do. Dialecticus on the systems to speed up that wheelbarrow further. The first Ghazi makes contact with the villager, but the Limitane is in position to deal with that as he looks to cut off from the other side with the second Limitane. Scout is in a little bit of danger here, running quite low. He should be able to make it back to the base safely. Yeah, with the Limitane comes through.
Right now. Yeah, I mean, for puppypaw, having initial units, these high-value Ghazi, right? He's able to kind of deny vision from the scout, threaten the scout. So, for Wam, he's not as easily going to be able to scout puppypaw. But he's doing a very good job of defending both his cisterns and his villagers, not having any idle time. So dealing with this early Ghazis very well.
It is going to be the Western Mercenary contract as the choice here for Wam. The first longbows are now in queue. Take a little while for them to come out, but
stable,
thankfully. Oh, yeah, stable as well. This is what we're talking about, right? You need to get this strike composition going as Byzantines to really be able to fight in the feudal age. You know, longbows and the Limitane, fantastic composition in and of itself, but at the end of the day, the amount of longbows you can get out is still very limited. And of course, both the longbows and the Libertane are dealt with by just a huge archer mass from 1puppypaw, which Delhi has no issue bringing together. So adding the horseman into the mix is going to make it way, way trickier here for 1puppypaw. It also means that he's going to be more vulnerable towards raids. So Wam is going to look to round out his composition. First batch is now out. 2 horsemen in queue already. Limitane production is not stopping, and exactly at the time when Sanctity is in and the sacred sites begin. And you can see now the consequences of continuously mining gold further as well as stone here for Wam. He does have a very stable and potent economy at this point. He has the wheelbarrow in and level 4 system, but he's not quite in position to contest those sacred sites.
On this scholar. He runs for his life. Very well done by Wam. The boar is relentless. Almost half health. And the raid as well from 1puppypaw. He's going to get a villager right there. And retreat before losing a Ghazi raider. And another raid. So 1puppypaw utilizing those Ghazis to be able to raid. Of course, accuratory defense. Those villagers are saying, I can defend myself. And the low health for both of those, right? Only 1 villager kill. I mean, the first raid was very good. But now, well, those 2 villagers are very eager. Well, I guess one of them is today.
1puppypaw exchanging 2 of those Ghazis for a villager kill, a hefty investment for an advantage down the line. Now the archers are in position as well to secure that side. He's going to look to recapture the northern one. More Ghazis coming in here towards the goal, but they get impaled by the Limitane.
The stealth forest, they don't see those almost 6 Limitane and longbows as well. And like you were talking about, the horseman in this situation is very valuable to kind of deny. And he aggroes E-Boar again before he
that ball
sacrifices himself.
Yeah, at this point, it's 1puppypaw's biggest enemy at this point in time. Wam doing a great job.
Aggro back onto the Scholar if it's too far.
What happened here with these villagers?
Oh my goodness.
There must be a misclick. Wam!
Villagers, I think maybe instead of the spears, the villagers went forward.
Yeah, he must have hotkeyed it together with his army. They're putting them forward. That costs him 2 villages and plenty of idle time. Little misstep there for Wam. Costing him quite dearly. 2 south sides now finally both locked in here for 1puppypaw.
Gonna go down, looks like. Maybe not.
Ooh, very close.
I think he might have wanted to aggro the boar one more time. Seems like the boar is a lot more effective. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, the horseman is not so much a army composition. He's not going to mass horseman. But in this scenario, when you only have Limitane and longbow, you're not able to contest those sites and you're not able to counter raid. So it kind of puts you at a back foot with all those Ghazi raids. So the horseman kind of gives you that mobility to be able to delay sites, deny sites, and also raid your opponent.
Exactly. It gives you a little bit of that leverage, not only to contest the sites, but also keep 1puppypaw on edge when he does inevitably move out to those additional berries. Just having a few of these mobile units can give you a lot of presence on the map, even though they may not be a most potent fighting unit to see. It looks like we might have our first major clash of this game here, as Puppy looks to make a stand on this side. He doesn't want to lose it.
But Wam already has the blacksmith upgrades, right? And the boar as well. The boar has been getting a lot of action in this game. Wam says enough of that, or Puppy says enough of that. But the blacksmith upgrades +1 range attack and defense already for Wam. And Puppy, it's a little slower, right? You need that. It's free of charge, but in these fights, especially with longbows and archers, is an advantage for 1puppypaw at the moment.
Interestingly here for 1puppypaw, he opted to go directly onto that frontal deer there instead of waiting for his professional scouts to finish to bring them safely under the town center. Heavy investment, but it does mean that he gets access to them earlier, allowing him to get a bigger mass. Like you mentioned, 1puppypaw realizing how behind in these ranged upgrades he is, dropping 2 blacksmith in order to compensate. Of course, Wam having access to the Dialecticus as the Byzantines means he can get them in quick time. Still sitting on 4 systems actually. Either doesn't quite know where to put the 5th one to gain maximal value, or doesn't really want to greed to do so.
And I think there's no tower on that forward of the wood line. It's just his army there, so it could be really problematic for this map because there's no view. But there is a tower, fortified tower here for Wam, so those villagers should be safe. As also his army is also moving backwards, and also a counter raid by Wam on Puppy. It looks like.
Little raid, the attack notification comes in. A couple of horsemen most likely sneak in there to cause some damage and idle time. Meanwhile, Puppy is going to do the same thing with this large number of Ghazis here. Definitely demands respect. No walls yet here for Wam. So he has to be very careful about where he lets these Ghazis go.
The wood line is vulnerable. I mean, that's a lot of Ghazis. And preemptively, Wam pulls them back. These villagers are low health as well, but thankfully there is a tower. One villager, though. There's no tower. I don't know if Puppy's going to see that in time. Oh, he doesn't. He doesn't have a scout.
Yeah, stealth forest. A bit of a thorn in Puppy's side here. Another villager kill would be quite nice for him. Wam himself managed to get one. The scholars again attempt to take the southern sacred side, but they are met by the horsemen. Meanwhile, at the same time, the northern one gets decapped as well. Wam now up to 20 longbows and looking to keep contesting this feudal age, not greeding for any early castle age. You can see how fast those numbers climb once those systems and economy is fully in position. 20 longbows, 20 on one Sultanate, 11 horsemen, more and more in queue for him. Wam not opting to add any spearmen here. He's going to look to stick with his composition, but may have been found a little out of position here.
Yeah, I mean, the mass of problem is Puppy doesn't have a scout. And the scholars are moving forward. He might lose them to the longbows. They're so forward. On the other side, though, he is doing good damage in terms of winning this fight. More reinforcements from Wam. So how many scholars have gone down? Still 12 on Puppy's side. Should be okay, but this fight, it looks like it might be in favor of PuppyPaw.
Yeah, the scholars have done a lot of work here for him. When those ranged upgrades came in, he recognizes he doesn't really need them anymore in those research buildings, in the mosques, as well as the Dome of Faith, so he can pull them forward. And once those Delhi scholars come out, and there's upwards of 10, it becomes so difficult to fight up against them. But of course,
the tides are turning.
The reinforcements are in, and
my goodness,
PuppyPaw just calls it
already.
Yeah, he knows if you're not able to actually break through in this position where you've invested so much in this feudal age, there's just not really much left for you anymore. The raid as well behind this, we saw in the split cam, with just a few horsemen. Wam idling out so many villages on the berries there for PuppyPaw. Secures him a second win here in game number 2. Wam looking in shape and wants to get revenge for yesterday.
Yeah, and like you said, PuppyPaw opting not to go for spears. And in that scenario, Wam actually chooses to go more heavily on horsemen, right? In that central fight. And the other thing is PuppyPaw was not able to kind of look and see with the scout, as opposed to Wam. He actually had a tower there, so his vision's a lot better. In these fights, your range units have to be able to have vision to be able to dish out damage, so that's also another factor that was going for Wam.
Yeah, that's undoubtedly true there. It's, as we mentioned, I was of the opinion it's just slightly favored for Byzantines, and Wam showing exactly why. Despite the slightly greedier start, he was able to weather the storm. Part of what allows him to do that is the map as well, right? I mean, PuppyPaw has the mobility early on and the pressure with the Ghazis, but you know, you can't always dedicate a scout to all of your raiding groups. At the end of the day, it costs food early on, and you know, a scout made means a Ghazi not made, right? So you'll just in turn have less Ghazis the more scouts you make.
Yeah,
probably another reason why he...
Look at his military value. PuppyPaw with a classic Delhi advantage, right? But even so, Wam was able to kind of defend his villagers. And the only villagers he really lost was actually because of a misclick, oddly enough. So he was able to do really good in terms of defending his base and then eventually building that mass with the mercenaries to gain map control in mid-map, and the horsemen trying to deny and delay the sacred site.
Yeah, exactly. PuppyPaw struggling here in this game number 2. We see the military value laid only further and further going up behind him. The scholars, of course, do count towards that there. It wasn't quite enough.
I will say though, there were no elephants, so I did not take the initiative. But if Gal's looking at me very disappointed, but it would be weird if there's no elephants. What am I? It's just random elephant noises. So I think I was safe there.
You got away with it this time.
Yeah, I think I have a good argument there.
True enough. True enough.
All right.
He was taking a tiny little break there, taken by Wam. We saw him walking across. PuppyPaw as well, potentially. Of course, it is best of 5, so only one more win needed here for Wam to close out for series, and unfortunately, actually knock out his brother here in this lower bracket finals. But never say never.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think next map? We have 3 options, and I mean, all of which, Oh, looks like it's been selected. The correct. So we'll see the civs as well in a bit. There's some good options for puppy paw still. There's Malians, of course. There's Ottomans and there's French. Looks like it's going to be French Malian. This is going to be really good for puppy paw. Looks like.
Yeah, this matchup historically is very common one, right? I mean, Malians are always vulnerable early on, right? It's quite similar to Byzantines, right? They have quite a similar type of early game. They rely on the infantry first off to secure their exposed resources, which in this case is opposed to berries and stone and gold. It will be that pit mine naturally, and few saves better to take advantage of that than French, but historically French has struggled to find the damage necessary to really punish Malians in this case, and we have seen plenty of attempts and different ways to try to deal with that, whether it be Chamber of Commerce or yesterday we saw, of course, Louis go for that 2TC up against Marine Lord, which looked promising initially, but it just went south for him quite quickly. Yeah, I mean, you know, you're using so much food in that case as the French for the increased villager production, knights, that you can't possibly make farms at the same time and retain map control. And eventually, the Malians, once those cows come in, once the corral is completed, it becomes a bit too much there for them. We have to see what Wam can do here to try to close out this series up against puppy paw. But I would undoubtedly say, especially on this map, puppy paw does have the advantage. I mean, because the map is so much more constricted, cavalry loses value, becomes easier to wall, easier to defend. There's not as many angles of attack for the French. So if puppy paw does opt for that classic, reliable composition of the javelin throws as well as Donzo's, Wam is going to have his work cut out for him.
I mean, that composition is the worst nightmare for French knights, right? That's why this matchup has typically been slightly favored for actually even a lot favored for Malian, especially in the Donzo javelin composition. And on this map, where it's kind of smaller, the infantry comp can maneuver and defend a lot more effectively. The only consideration, as we see the cinematic view from behind, inside the Rockies, inside the mountains. I always love that view.
It looks like a net, right?
Yeah, it looks like a net. It's very interesting. I was going to say, sometimes what happens on this map is your pit mines are forward. And the second pit mine also is forward on this map. So, and that initial French aggression can be dangerous to deal with. But you definitely have your units, that is Donzos and Javelins, to kind of defend your base. But we have also been seeing a lot of Sofa play lately by Malians.
That's right. Notably nowadays, as we load into here in Rockies, namesake of course, where we are here in Denver, Colorado, the Sofa have become so popular after 2 buffs in a row, not only for cost but also damage. They, as well as production speed. Actually, no, it wasn't cost. I'm mistaken. It was just the production speed as well as the damage. They become very, very popular here, and you know, quite often we see Horseman Spear being played up against the French, and you know, if you have a pseudo knight here as the Malians, you can
stronger, right?
Exactly, you can quite easily go Sofa as well as Donzo to contest the French composition. That is more popular on more open maps, something like Oldland or Prairie for that matter, these types of maps. Whereas here, I would say Javelin Throw Donzo gains a lot more value. So I'm very curious to see which one puppy paw opts for here. Actually, this type of map and this type of matchup, well, it's just a matchup really. We don't have that Dark Age pressure that Malians is typically a victim of. French very rarely, if ever, open spears. It just doesn't work well for them. Not a unit they want to ever make, really.
But one consideration is that Puppy Paw, his deer packs are actually very, very forward. And when Wam goes Pro Scouts, he's going to be able to secure his own deer no problem, especially if Puppy Paw does not go for that cavalry. But also, if he's able to gain the military advantage, he can actually steal a lot of the deer that Puppy Paw has. And that gives a lot of advantage, a lot of tempo for French, especially French is the one trying to be on the aggressive, right? So extra deer, extra food, especially high value, high gather rate deer for French, for Wam, will be very, very valuable.
Anzakori coming in here for Puppy Paw, edging up with 4. Meanwhile, Wam opting for 3 on the School of Cavalry. Actually, both slightly slower age ups than we're used to, right? Typically it's 4 to even 5 sometimes for the French on that School of Cavalry, and either 5 to 6 for the Malians on the Mansa quarry there. Placed directly at the front, even leaving some space there. I don't know if that's, it looks like 2 tiles, but it might be 3. Yeah, that's 2 tiles, yeah. So, gonna be enough for farms. I'm sure we'll see that.
Eventually. I mean, if we do, actually, we do see a board
Wow.
play by Wham. It looks like puppypaw is able to sniff that out right away. His scout's actually hitting the scout of Wham. That scout is very, very low health, 4 health, trying to get back home. It looks like he will be able to, though.
Yeah, only one more hit was needed from Puppypaw Scout to take him out. Scouts do deal bonus damage up against other scouts, so Wham, putting back just in time there. We see the classic cow opener here for Puppypaw. This is typically what you would do when you do want to go for the sofa. So we're going to see whether Puppypaw does opt for that. This is the choice you have in the early game as the Malians. You either opt for your economic upgrades or this early cow play to pad your food income just a little bit. But
now
this ball play is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this board play changes things a little bit, right? For puppypaw, you kind of want to go for the attack a little more than you otherwise would have. And as the observers pointing out, the wheelbarrow has been researched and survival techniques. So not pro scouts immediately here. Instead, relying on the deer for that economic advantage and that high gather rate. That scout is very injured, but he's going to be careful. Try to scout. Well, of course, it's really important to scout right now. There's a barracks coming down. Spears immediately instead of sofa.
I have to say, I do love this adaptation here from Wham. We do see that typical Dark Age wheelbarrow that has become very popular for Wham, just like for the French that Wham is playing at this point, which you did mention earlier. But that boar, we see that the boar is the same side as the 2 deer packs here for Wham, which, you know, it's not like Mali's ever going to stop you from taking your home 2 deer packs. But at the same time, you're very unlikely to get any of Mali's deer packs unless there's any severe blunder. Even forward like this, it's very difficult to contest them directly and to take them. So, you know, why would you bother invest into such an expensive technology, even for French, as the Pro Scout, when you can just get this for free and instead rely on a heavier pump in units here for Wham? We see 2 knights on the field already. Archers as well in queue. Very nice movement around that gold mine there here for Puppypaw. The charge does get stopped by the Donzo there.
Yeah, like you said, all of the hunt for Wham's on one side, so like probably a case of let's go for the best food source, right? The boar, and then we can just transition to the deer as well, no problem. We just have to defend on one side anyways. And like you saw on this map, the smaller map, so small walls on the left side to secure the wood lines. In general, he's not going to have to be worried about Malians attacking so early and having so much advantage with cavalry and maneuverability.
Puppypaw does opt for the classic here. Prudent choice, I would say. It is the Donzo alongside the javelin throwers. Despite the sofa focus start with the deer.
Ooh,
An interesting
scout.
decision. Scout? Ooh. Yeah, there's no warrior scout, so not quite able to kill him off.
That scout has been surviving a lot of fight situations.
He's a veteran at this point.
Yeah, but we do see puppypaw pushing forward with that spearman javelin comp. And there is no tower for Wham on the board, so he's just relying on his military. But he does have a good-sized military to defend his out.
Yeah, Puppypaw actually pushing very, very deep here. Risky decision up against the French. He does have a good mass of Donzo, and he did get good damage on one of those knights. Definitely wanted to potentially keep chasing that knight to get another spear throw and finish him off, but not quite able to do so and prudently backs off there, not to overextend. The numbers are climbing for both players. The javelin numbers are getting now slowly to the point. Only a few more needed here for Puppypaw to begin two-shotting those archers.
And one consideration is that puppypaw, when seeing the boar play, actually opted to go aggressive, right? He's trying to make as many units as possible so that he can ideally push forward a little bit. But by doing that, he's not been able to get that second pit mine very early, right? Now he's building the houses, but it's more so because he has to build houses, not so much because he has the wood to immediately go for that pit mine. So it's going to be very delayed here.
Yeah, indeed. You have to be careful early on here as the Malians. So playing it safe, getting the units necessary first before really going to try to secure that secondary pit mine. We see no active gold gathering yet here for Puppypaw. Not really needed until you do start going for those cows or potentially a secondary archery range to get more javelins. He's going to go on the deer as well here. So the tower and 5 villages will secure that deer for him and give him even further food income. which will definitely be needed against an extended feudal age here up against the French. Blacksmith is up at this point for Wam, but he didn't quite spare the gold yet for any of those much needed ranged upgrades in this position.
Ooh, villager down. French is so good in this scenario because they can two-shot villagers, and it just takes that split second of not paying attention for your villager to go down.
Yeah, that's right. One singular knight finds a kill, and seems like the villager did get lost there whilst building the pit mine. He found himself a deer and is just absolutely starving for some venison, turns out.
Yeah, 1puppypaw opting to eat the forward deers early on as opposed to later in the stage in the game where French is probably going to have a lot bigger of an army and he's going to be under pressure. So a case of you don't need to, but why not, right?
We can see now why exactly historically this matchup is something French really struggles with. I mean, Wam was on ball early, right? He skipped bro scouts, which means that early on he's going to have an even bigger mass than usual. He has a lot of archers. Seems like knight production has halted for now, but compared to what 1puppypaw has as the Malians, that's just not an army that he can ever fight in this position. I mean, the javelins will one-shot the archers and they'll be pretty much impervious to arrow fire from them. You know, the Donzos, those 5 knights are never going to find an opening against so many, and even getting close to this mass will result in an immense amount of poke damage that Wam just can't really afford to take.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is kind of the best case scenario as an opening for French, right? Early upgrades, early war, a lot of good food income, not having to deal with the initial kind of slow build-up of pro scouts. But even so, like you said, even if you want to take this fight, how are you going to 27 archers, 5 knights versus 15 or 16 Gonzos and Jabs? It's just not a fight you can take.
It does appear that Wam, recognizing this reality, is slowly trending towards that castle age, and this is one way that the French can sort of look to contest this. Having map control and denying scouting from the Malians means that you can kind of control the ebb and flow of information here in this game. So our people doesn't understand and doesn't know that, of course, Wam has stopped units at this point in time. He might have an inkling potentially, but he cannot confirm that. Right, all he sees is just a bunch of knights poking in here as another villager goes down. Make that a third as another raid comes in from the back as well. He's going to give up a knight's life for that, however. Maybe even a second. He's going to look to hit the berries as well, but the charge has already been used. Looking to idle as much as possible. Force further units here.
So he can stay here, but the TC fire is what deters him. Now Wam is aging up with Royal Institute. He was initially going with the Hall, but only 4 knights. I think he just wants to be aggressive, especially at this point. Only 6 cows for 1puppypaw, so it's not usually fast cow boom. You think he goes for more of a what? I don't think he'd go for mass knights at this point, right? There's so many spears. What do you think the Royal Institute is?
I mean, I'm perplexed, frankly, by the Royal Institute here. It's quite a strange decision to me because, I mean, it's clearly an all-in play as we see actually Wam just either not paying attention or having a very clear purpose in mind. He loses so many archers in this northern mobilizing of his forces. In fact, he's going to get completely encircled by the javelins from behind, but at the same time, the Donzos are on the forward, so he could look to keep chasing those Donzos, but the issue is that the javelins are faster than the archers, so every time he stops, he's going to lose 1 to even 2 archers. Wam, the veterancy is on the way, but it takes so long for the archers, 1.5 minutes.
I mean, this just seems like a classic case of kind of positioning army. They're caught off guard. All of these archers, and you do have to realize that Wam, the majority of his units were archers, and now they're caught off guard. And I don't think any of these archers are going to survive.
No. I mean, I struggle to see a way back in this for Wam. The Royal Institute as well. I mean, we're mentioning typically you get it specifically for that royal bloodlines, which is the French's version of biology, of course. Not only does it give more health, but it's cheaper than regular biology, even normally, and then Royal Institute makes it even cheaper than that. But, you know, with only 3 knights on the field, that's very little value can be extracted from that here for Wam, and now his army is looking anemic compared to 1puppypaw on the Malians, and Malians, historically, they really don't mind being an age behind for an extended period of time. They have the answers they need to deal with Castle Age luxury units, whether it be men-at-arms, knights for that matter. They have the tools they need, even though the units might be weaker. It's that income that is hard to contest. And Papipo now, with a surge of confidence, feeling confident enough now to just go forward and contest Wam directly in his base after getting such a good trade. Just a third of Wam's archer mass is only left in this game. Picking off some villages of his own. Wam did do a good job raiding. More villagers have been killed for him. He went up from 3 kills up to 7.
Yeah, but there's so much military advantage for Puppypaw, and he's able to raid and take this fight against the Castle Age units. He has no problem taking this fight. There's so many javelins and so many spears to protect the javelins as well. Even if these knights are eventually going to be royal bloodline, with this pressure, Ron's just going to take so much damage.
Yeah, it's just so much here for Wam to handle. At the same time in the front, 2 javelin throws idling out the entirety of the gold gathering here for Wam when he needs it most, when his initial gold mine has run out. Wam on his last leg in this game, but at the same time, the javelins overextend on the wood line and get completely cut off by the knights. All of its front javelins here for Papipo are going to fall. Barely any left here. Why this overextension there?
That could be what Wam needs. The javelin throwers, so that he has just enough archers to be able to deal with some of these spears, and then eventually those royal bloodlines nice to be able to dish out the damage. But even so, it still looks like Puppypaw is in a solid position here, especially because his cows, he has more cows now. He's been able to invest. He knows that Wam has been going to Castle Age. He knows that it's Royal Institute, so he can kind of decide how many units he wants to take. He's kind of moving back towards his base a little bit, not moving, extending too much to kind of not risk it.
That's right. Papipo looks to at this point cut unit production whilst at the same time still fighting forward. Brave decision, but after the amount of good traits he has had, doesn't surprise me too much. The javelins push forward, screened by the Donzos on the front, is going to allow them to poke further on these archers. Some of the Donzos do go down as well, but there it is, the Grand Fulani Corral. The only issue here for Papipo is there's a bit of a blocker in the form of that archery agent blacksmith. Doesn't quite have enough space to fit all of the ranches necessary to get full income from those ranches. It will probably be wise to delete them. He can fit another one there. And that might just be enough. But I'm not sure.
Maybe another one.
Yeah. That might just be enough there. I think it's going to be an influence. The corral, of course, has to cross the midpoint of the ranch to give that additional income.
Puppypaw has been on deer, right, this whole time, so his food income was pretty good. And now, of course, with the cows, he's aging up. His passive food income is going to be all the better. And Wam, 6 knights right now. I mean, they are royal bloodline knights with archer mass remasking. But imagine if you hadn't lost all those archers. What kind of position he would be in. Look at the army value. He had a solid army. He was also Castle Age. He was waiting for his veterancy, but unfortunately, he was just out of position, losing all of those archers. And now, Puppypaw is Malians, Cowboom, with the superior numbers in terms of military and better economy.
Exactly, and the production is not stopping either. More javelins, more Donzos here for Papipo. Wam has done a good job of, continuously massing his units. He still has those deer. Even his secondary deer pack looks to still be mostly intact, I believe. But the problem is that the longer this goes, just the income for Papipo is going to get so out of control already. Even with the food that Wam has left, Papipo still has more. As the clash comes in, Wam knows he can wait no further, especially with the Institute, but the mass is just obscene here from Papipo. Wam has just no angle of engagement whatsoever. And, having less army than the Malians in Castle Age is already a definitely horrific position to be in here for Wam. And he looks to back off.
You can see why this army composition is so problematic. I mean, those knights couldn't even get any damage off, right? So many spears, and continually those javelins are, getting rid of those archers. The archers' numbers going down as well. But, I mean, Puppypaw's army has barely been touched by that fight.
Exactly. And his units being so cheap means that he can mass even more at this point. I mean, just Donzos alone. Papipo has more Donzos than Wam has entire army, not even counting the javelin throws. And that number is only going to get further and further in his lead.
It's like third pit mine's eventually going to go up on that back gold. He's only gathering it from that for now. Anytime he's going to be able to get that third pit mine, but he doesn't really even need it. All of those cows, right? 22 archers, 14. Now these knights do pack a punch, but 1puppypaw is just not wavering from this army. He continues to make consos, continues to make javelins. Why change something that's not broken, right? He doesn't need Sofa, he doesn't need to kind of overextend himself and make that switch. He already has the infrastructure. You see a raid, I mean, Wham does need things like this, right? One villager goes down and try to come back from this position.
That's right. But Bill understands his position very well here, right? He has the slow, somewhat vulnerable, immobile infantry composition here. So he knows that if he overextends prematurely, that is exactly when this Royal Bloodlines play from Wham can pay off. To trap his army on the front, wipe it completely, then look to contest before he can remass. 1puppypaw and Wham both understand this fact, so 1puppypaw is playing it safe, realizing that he doesn't need to push out. He can just stay safe, keep massing, until eventually he just has way too much, and Wham is going to look to force the issue instead. There's another clash comes in here towards the wood line from 1puppypaw. The gold miners on the right are exposed as well. The Knights do charge in there, get one off on the front line, but the Donzos are there to meet them. Some of the javelins do fall to the Knights again. They're on the front exposed, the javelins are, but the Donzos meet them yet again. The archers are pretty much all dead. Barely any are left. The Knights can't really find an effective angle of attack, and there's not enough of them to pose too much of a threat. Great micro from both players, but the mass is only going to go further and further in favor of 1puppypaw here.
And 1puppypaw has more units on the other side. Let's remember, this was not his entire army. 1puppypaw had a bunch of screws on the other side to deal with that initial night raid. So, I mean, it just feels so bad for Wham because you know you have to do something. You have to push out damage. But how can you with this army? How can you with this army composition and the army numbers? 72 military pop versus 33. I mean, it's just kind of a lose-lose situation.
You can see how incredible that Malian and Fulani Coral cow income is. Only now did 1puppypaw move villagers onto food, but before that he had 3 and had the exact same food income as Wham did, who had over 30 villages on food. It's just obscene here in this position for 1puppypaw. He's looking to take full advantage of it. Wham looking desperately here to try to find some type of way to get back in this game. He understands that raids is kind of his only hope. The night numbers are looking pretty healthy. The archers are remassed as well. Those early French economy upgrades, the cheaper ones, right, really paying off for him here, despite only having a Royal Institute and not the safety of the guild hall to fall back on. He's still doing a great job of massing up and spending his resources extremely well. But he's definitely on the back foot in this position. He needs to find an immense amount of damage. He's pivoting around the gold mine here, trying to see if he can find villages, but the gold mine has already most likely been mined out at this stage. Maybe he can get some burn on the cows, but 1puppypaw does notice and is there to meet the Knights.
I think 1puppypaw might be able to take the fight, but there's so many more units coming from behind. Yeah, and Wham can't do this indefinitely, right? Wham is running out of food on the map, and when that happens, when that gear pack and those berries runs out, what is Wham going to do? Farm strategies at this stage already are economically behind, but Wham is trying to get damage. He knows that most of 1puppypaw's economy is on the right side, right? So, kind of when he's pulling back those knights, moving those archers forward to get some villager kills, which he does, but at this stage, is this enough?
It's a very nice play there from Wham, right? Pulling the entirety pretty much of 1puppypaw's army there on the left with the Royal Bloodlines Knights, and at the same time, after he sees that the army has been pulled, he moves in from the right side to find the damage. But as you mentioned, is it enough? He found a good bunch of villager kills yet again. Pushes the Knights forward. Oh, this could be so scary here for Wham. 1puppypaw's army is split, but I'd argue even this mass here from 1puppypaw might be enough to contest. All of the Knights and archers from Wham connect here towards this northern mass from 1puppypaw. Most of his army is actually still towards the right side of the map.
Yeah, I mean, Wham has been able to kind of take these fights, but 1puppypaw's army is split. That is one advantage he has, but he has to, right? If 1puppypaw was able to kind of gather up his entire army, Wham, there's no way Wham can take this fight. And we do see on the right side, the right flank, there are more units from 1puppypaw. And how does he knows his unwinnable fight.
Yeah, the encirclement there from 1puppypaw to close out the game. Wham just did a great job raiding all throughout this game, finding value when needed and looking to really maximize that Royal Bloodlines, Royal Institute play. But, you know, on a map like this, against this Malian composition, it's so difficult. Papipo on the other side showing amazing patience, amazing understanding of exactly the dynamics of this matchup and utilizing it fully to his advantage to secure himself his first win in this series and lives to fight another day.
Yeah, initially when Wham was aging up, he had that archer mask, right? And he had the good position where he was putting on some pressure. He was raiding at two different locations, and Puppy Paw had no idea that Wham was aging up. He didn't have that scouting information, but Wham didn't exactly, was a bit hesitant. He initially put on the Guild Hall, aging up with the Guild Hall, but switched all over to the Royal Institute, and we were talking about there's no knights on the field, right? And in addition to that, by losing all of those archers, that tempo advantage is just so big now. You can't, it's already an unfavorable matchup with Malians. Puppy Paw was able to take advantage.
Yeah, exactly right. We see there graphs telling the tale of this game, right? The economy count. We can see, of course, French does have that additional villager building speed, so he's going to be adding villagers all game long, courtesy of those raids, making it happen as well. But the true economy, we see the dotted line, the cows, that is what tells the real tale. The income is just so oppressive when it's fully online with that corral.
And you can see the army value lead right at that castle age spot. Right afterwards, you can see the swing towards Puppy Paw's favor so much is because Wham lost all of those archers right as they age up, and that archer upgrade, veterancy upgrade, is not as fast as Puppy Paw would on his unique units as the Malians, right? It takes so long. So, like feudal units, all of these archers got kind of pushed in towards the other side by the javelin.
Exactly. Much needed win here for Puppy Paw in this series, right? He was just one game away from elimination from the tournament entirely, but even then it would have been a great result as third, but he says no. There's more to come here indeed, and we already have the next matchup here on the way, and a spicy one indeed at that. Cliffside is the map of choice here for Wham. The loser, of course, always picks the next map in the series. Wham looking to make a stand here with the Japanese. Meanwhile, Puppy Paw pulls out the Ottomans, which this is a very intriguing matchup because it can kind of go either way. Historically, I would say Ottomans is a little bit more favored. Of course, the Japanese have a very potent feudal age, courtesy of those cheaper Yumi, their premium unit in that feudal age. But, when the other civilization's premium unit happens to be a counter, and at the same time, frankly, the best unit in the game by far, in my opinion, the Sepahi, of course, that's a different story.
Yeah, and this is a cliffside, right? So the players are a little closer. It could be advantage for a Japanese player with the cheaper barracks, especially if you're leaning for those infantry comps. But in Field Age, a lot of times Japanese players actually go for that Yumi composition because they're so cheap, they're so easy to mass, and it's just so hard to deal with because even if you get on top of them, if there's even a little bit of spears and some leeway to go back, they're so fast they can just kind of retreat. It's kind of like cavalry almost in the Field Age, so you can kind of pick your fights and retreat, do some damage, retreat. And so that's something going on for the Japanese.
Quite excited to see what we have in the book here for us in this game number 4 as we load into Cliffside. Match point again for Wham in this case. Was attempting to close out the last one in the last match, but wasn't able to. Puppy Paw emerged victorious. And once again, we will see the brothers at it again here on Cliffside. Puppy Paw spawning towards the southwestern side of Cliffside in the color red as the Ottomans. Meanwhile, Wham in the color yellow as the Japanese towards the northeastern side of the map.
It looked like he was going straight under TC, but these players are aware. A spearman for Japanese, of course, cheaper barracks. A lot of people are opting to go for that early military school, so those spearmen actually are going to be very late compared to Wham. Wham spearman is going to go on that gold very early already. 2 spears on the map, moving towards that gold position. It's going to be, yeah, you see all of those villagers going towards the gold. He wants to gather that gold nice and early because, especially on this map, these spears are just here so early. It's not even 2 minutes, and the first spear's already here.
He's actually right. And Puppy Paw actually putting an immense amount of villagers on this gold. Probably a bit of an overcompensation here. It makes me wonder whether he intends to get even more gold than the 100 needed for age up. We'll have to see how much he lingers there. Because I know he just wanted to make completely sure that he doesn't miss out on any of the gold necessary.
Yeah, I mean, this is already some damage, right? That Wham is able to kind of inflict. That's so many idle time, so much villagers, so much idle time for puppy paw this early in the game. But yeah, I mean, this is the power of Japanese in this map, right? Cheap barracks, only 2 spears you have to invest, and your age up's not even going to be so delayed.
It's true. With the cheaper barracks, like you mentioned earlier, Japanese really don't mind going for display. You know, it does delay their age up a little bit, but the Ottomans, they need that gold, they need that stone, especially if they intend to play in that feudal age. So these early spears are going to make sure none of that is going to happen. As you mentioned, the military score is going to mean that Puppypaw's own spears are delayed, but that military score will not stop working all game long. The first one is out now for Puppypaw. It's going to look to be a bit annoying towards the spears. Of course, Puppypaw, later on, once he goes for the Imam point, which is proving very popular, so most likely what he's going to go for, he's going to be able to heal that spearman, whereas Wam will not be able to do so for his own, not until Castle Age at least, but I'd be quite surprised if those spears survive that much.
Yeah, I mean, the second spear, this is the fastest you can get as Ottomans from the military school, right? He immediately went from the military school early on. So the second spear, you have to wait for it to be able to contest. And for Wham, it's just so nice to have that 2 spears, really cheap, and then be able to kind of delay Puppypaw so much. And of course, I mean, look, they're equal age up speed, essentially.
Yeah, slightly painful positioning on the Kura storehouse there for Wam. It just bugs me, you know. It just bugs me when you don't have space for the farms.
That was
Bit of my
second spearman is out, but the initial spearman is such a low health. I think this is going to be problematic for Puppy.
Yeah, I don't quite think he's going to be able to go back on that gold quite yet. I mean, the third spearman will come out around the time the age up finishes, just slightly afterwards, most likely. We do see Tawara on the way here for Wam as well. Most likely going to look to move to those berries soon. And quite curious to see what Wam's plan is here as the Japanese, right? Only 3 on the Kura storehouse. And with the research for Tawara, he might look to go on those berries early, which is a sign normally for that castle age. But, you know, as you mentioned earlier, with the short distance between the players here, as well as the frontal gold spawn for Wam, it's going to be tough. It's going to be quite tough to try to go for a castle age. And of course, Ottomans very potent in the feudal age, especially if they want to go for an all-in, as the spear does end up going under TC and dies.
Yeah, you always have to be careful as the attacking player to make sure that PC fire doesn't get to you, because there's so much damage this early in the game, right? But there's still 1 spearman causing. Yeah, I mean, that goal has been delayed so long. Puppypaw probably wanted to get some eco upgrades at this stage, but he has not been able to gather any gold because of the spearman.
Wow, adding 2 additional villages on the Kura storehouse, realizing his job may be slightly slow here. Wall as well, Wam wall for a shocker. He's going to come up there on between the 2 little wood lines for him. You know, Puppypaw. He switch over the military school to the Sipahi.
The boar again. Of course, that spearman's gonna have some trouble.
Yeah, it's surprising, eh?
Wam has been able to pull boar on a lot of instances today. Yeah, almost half health for that spearman because of the boar. And in terms of sheep, actually, Wam has been able to gather almost 5 more sheep than Puppypaw, so that is advantage for him. Especially, it's going to be Sipahi heavy, right, for Ottomans. You want that food access. You see a tower coming on for Wam, so it's going to be kind of securing this forward position and a lot on wood as well. So it's not going to be any type of fast castle. It's going to be more of a fight in the field and then kind of find a window to a castle.
This is one of the big strengths of Japanese, right? We mentioned there with the sheep. Of course, Wam also moving out onto those berries, which will further extend the lifeline of his sheep. And naturally, the Kura storehouse already 2 farms under that one that are granted passively constantly up until it's fully filled out, after which it grants wood. So Japanese's food advantage, especially when playing feudal age, is not something to be underestimated whatsoever. A big reason that they have become so strong in today's meta. As the first archery range hits the field, 1 Yumi on the field now already. The Sipahi comes in. He's met by spears after he pokes in on those berries, and stable on the way here for Wam as well.
In a map like this, where the 2 players are close, right, closer by, the spearman and Yumi composition is all the more powerful. And actually, Wam's also going for the cavalry as well. So kind of a triple comp for Wham and kind of fighting it out in feudal, not letting Ottomans getting that mass, getting that pressure, not being back, because if you're trying to go fast castle in the situation with this forward gold position, it's just not going to work, right? So Wham knows that. He knows what units to make, and he's kind of setting himself for the long feudal, it looks like.
These kind of maps, similarly to Rockies earlier, right? It's a bit more open in the sense that there's more lateral space that can be used to your advantage if you opt for cavalry especially. But the cliffs can make it very hard. The map is named Cliffside at the end of the day. So a lot of choke points, a lot of smaller entryways which can easily be walled off, but there are plenty of them. So still a very big investment early on. Quite curious to see exactly how effective cavalry proves to be here. Like you mentioned, once those Yumi numbers start climbing, it can become very dangerous for 1puppypaw. Although, with his earlier age up, he does have a slight military tempo here, so he's able to actually contest Wham directly at this point in time. Courtesy, of course, of those Sipahi, just such an oppressive unit. It's disgusting.
Oh, look at the total resources collected. It looks like Puppy was able to kind of reestablish himself. And we see this rate. I mean, this is... They are stuck a little bit, but those Sipahi have so much damage. Looks like... Oh, but there's no villager kills.
Yeah.
Sipahi going down. That's so much, so expensive for 1puppypaw.
That's a pretty disastrous place there for 1puppypaw to take a fight. He looked to go for the villagers, but the surround from Wham means that 3 Sipahi, the most premium horsemen in the game, just 4, essentially for nothing but a little bit of idle time. 1puppypaw definitely a bit frustrated with that one there. Wham now looking to reassert himself, might feel a bit of surge of confidence after that one, but of course there's more Sipahi and more archers on the way from 1puppypaw, so Wham not pulling the gas, not pushing down on the gas just yet to move forward. He's going to look to stay defensive for now. And Daimyo is in at this point too.
And Wham's not... Oh, these archers need to pull back right now because those Yumi are much, much faster. And when you're caught out of position like this, on the other side though, there are some raids, so both players have to pay attention on 2 different sides. Looks like 2 villagers have gone down, only 1 Sipahi and a scout. So that's a much, much better raid for 1puppypaw.
Yeah, that's a very nice play there by 1puppypaw, mirroring Wham from last game. Brings in the archers there just to bait most of Wham's army away, and then the Sipahi move in to cause the real damage on those berries. So he only trades a couple of archers there in exchange for 2 villagers. Definitely worth it.
In similar situation as the Byzantine game, right? So Wham wants a bit of flexibility. 1 horseman only. He's not kind of leaning into horsemen. He's not trying to make a lot of them. He's just trying to have options to be able to counter it. He knows that Puppy's on deer, so he wants to be able to have that flexibility. Now, he's also making 1 samurai, it looks like. So a lot of different units, kind of a lot of options for Wham. He's just kind of throwing a lot into the army to make it harder for 1puppypaw to deal with.
Yeah, all we need now is some Onobugesha to fully round out the entire roster for Japanese in the feudal age.
Diversity of units. I mean, Japanese, this is why they're also pretty strong in the feudal as well. That mech is going to go down. Pretty tough loss. I wonder what Vizier point you went for. Was it the 2 mechers or was it... Oh, it was sheep. Yeah. But the sheep is just so much more versatile, right? You also get the extra bonus from mining speed. Generally, that's what players go with.
Yeah, when it comes to these types of very feudal-centric, aggressive games, food can often be the determining factor. Most often is, in fact, the determining factor between a win and a loss. The secondary vizier did come in, and now we see 1puppypaw went for those imams. Unfortunately, some value has been lost, right? It being the secondary vizier point there. Plenty of units were lost that cannot further be healed as the Sipahi get cut off there. Very nice catch there by Wham.
Wham's been able to do a very good job of kind of catching these Sipahi off guard. Almost 5, 6, maybe 7 Sipahi have gone down. These are very expensive units. These are not just ordinary horsemen. They are very good. Like you said, maybe even the best unit in the game, but they are expensive, especially this early in the game.
That they are indeed. So losing them like this, definitely painful for 1puppypaw here. 1puppypaw is being very aggressive with these raids. It makes you wonder whether he really needs to be this aggressive, right? I mean, he might be worried about a Castle Age sneak in, but...
The military school is not working right now. It's actually toggled
Oh,
off.
no.
There are no units coming out of the military school. This is so painful to see. I mean, military schools are so important for the Ottomans, and there's, I mean, insult to injury at this point.
Yeah, that's actually disastrous there for Papipo in this position. Let's just hope he realizes later on, but there's no real reason that he would want to check that, right? Unless he potentially switches it over to the Mechter in order to get one of those on the field as a secondary weapon, one he already has, a buffer in that case. Plenty of Yumi on the field already, but there's so many Sipahi as well. There's only 3 spears, but there are Samurai, and those can be a great meat shield up against them, but not too much damage to deal with them.
Now, Wham is kind of leaning pretty heavily on Samurai, but the problem is when there's this many Sipahi, eventually long term you do need spears. You absolutely need spears because these, when they can use the Fortitude ability, they can kind of just catch all of your range units off guard, and that becomes really dangerous. You want some spears nearby so that they can't use that ability, because if they do, and there's spears around, the Sipahi melt.
Exactly right, and on top of that, right, sure, the Samurai will be tanky up against archers as well as Sipahi at the same time, but, you know, with the range that Sipahi have, they can even kite men-at-arms as if they're range units, another reason for their incredible potency here. Papipo looking to put on the pressure, but there is a fortified outpost here alongside arrow slits as well. Secondary outpost now going down too. Wow, really looking to fortify this position. I don't see Papipo breaking this one.
Hopefully he realizes the military school pretty early, but these imams are really valuable. You don't want to lose any of them, right? You want this duo. You want to be able to heal each other and the army as well. Yeah, the military school is still
That
not
is so
producing.
painful.
That is so bad for Puppy Paw.
You must notice soon, right? Hopefully. I mean, there's no active stone gathering yet, so there's no play towards that secondary military school, and you can see the strength of this Japanese food income. Now, having Fudasashi as well, I believe it's called, the secondary mill upgrade for the Japanese, means that even more gathering rate from those berries. I think they were secured there as well for him. So floating gate now on the way, but the mass from Babipo is looking pretty scary. There's a lot of Sipahi, and as we mentioned before, very few spears to hold the line and dissuade any further push. But this triple outpost in position here from Wam, as well as a very respectable ranged man. The Sipahi actually found an opening through the Samurai. Look to go onto the Yumi, but they don't want to overextend there. Many of them will go down in exchange for the Yumi, and the Yumi, of course, are so much cheaper. Potentially a third of the price of one of these Sipahi almost.
And now Puppy Paw says, never mind, I do have to go, because yeah, now he probably wishes he had stayed around and tried to deal some damage on that range mass. Because right now, all this army is going to, if they get veterancy, it's just all the more challenging for Puppy Paw. And all of these kind of stationary towers, look at, I mean,
it's just too much. The food income there for Wam, the positioning and the fortified food income there is just too much for Papipo to break through. GG is called, and Wam gets revenge over yesterday in a 3-1, and in a bittersweet finish here, eliminates his brother here in the losers bracket final, but in turn secures himself a position in the final up against Marine Lord.
yeah, very, very well played by Wham. It looked like he was kind of knew what his plan was in that game, much more decisive. He knew kind of he had just had to hold defensively all those towers, even though he didn't have spears. So that's just another way he was able to kind of overcome that, right? And so we're going to have a interview with the winner. Wham's going to come up. Congratulations. All right. 3-1, very well, good performance here. What do you think about just kind of, I mean, it's always difficult, right, when you're playing against your brother. What do you think was kind of the problem with a lot of these games where Puppy Paw was just kind of didn't feel like he kind of gave up a lot. It felt like early in some games, but it seemed like maybe you just had the plan in those games. The only game, why did you go Royal Institute in that French game, you think?
I thought I could kill him. I thought he wouldn't expect the age up in that situation. I actually think that would have worked if I didn't lose my entire army
Yeah.
before going to Castle Age. So I don't think that was the issue. I think maybe a little bit
army
safer
position.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looked like you initially wanted to go Guildhall, but then you kind of changed it to a more aggressive plan, like just because the Malians are so difficult to deal with, right, long term. But yeah, army position for this game, Japanese versus Ottomans. What do you think about this matchup? Because I think since the barracks kind of changed, Japanese has a lot more tempo to do Dark Age aggression.
Yeah, you kind of have to expect that Ottomans usually goes military school, which means that they're going to go on the gold a little bit slow. And, spears for Japan's not that expensive. It's not really annoying me that much. So I thought, I'll poke his gold a little bit, annoy him a little bit. Doesn't cost me that much, and I think it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, lastly, the game where Byzantines Delhi. How about that matchup? Do you think Byzantines a little more favored, but you think the horseman play is kind of what gives you the ability to kind of poke and prod, slow the sacred sites, and is that the plan?
Yeah, I think the horseman allows me to keep him on his toes. Like, he has to tower his berries. He has to make sure that all of his scholars are safe, his villagers are safe. I think it's a lot easier to play for Byzantines in this situation. If you go for spearman plus horseman, you can just kind of move it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder for Delhi. I think Delhi can win, but yeah, it's definitely a lot harder for them in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the last game that we did not talk about was the classic, right? The first game, the Rus versus China. What do you think about that? Because it looked really scary early on with a lot of damage being done by 1puppypaw, and then you were able to turn it around. Can you talk about that? I think the food was the issue, and eventually.
Yeah, exactly. The Chinese Rus matchup is so China has the early tempo advantage, and you saw that 1puppypaw was really trying to utilize that, right, with his night diving and stuff like that. You can see here, and he actually got quite a bit of villagers. I was a little bit concerned at many points throughout this game, actually, but the one thing you do have to remember is that he is sacrificing knights to kill your villagers. I am down a lot, but
Yeah.
I think the army value was pretty hard in my favor at this point. And obviously he is going to run out of food at some point. You have to watch that bull as well. I had a knight and a scout there pretty much the entire time. So I knew my win condition was the food and just withering away his army.
Yeah.
I knew I was behind on villagers, but I was okay with that at that point. Yeah.
I think there was one knight actually on the berries eventually went to the boar as well. That knight kind of prevented any additional food, and I think that was kind of what kind of broke the camel's back eventually.
Yeah, I think especially on that bull, I killed like 5, maybe. Yeah, I think 5 villagers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, congratulations. Very well played in this series. Moving on, and good best of luck in the coming games.
Yeah, thank you so much.